Welcome to 60 Scales and the Truth, a podcast where amazing guitar players reflect on their lives and on how they got where they are today. My name is Niels Guns. I'm a journalist, podcast maker and a guitar fanatic. Thanks for tuning in. My guest today is a very talented Dutch guitarist who might not be yet be internationally renowned, but that's just a matter of time. He's an outstanding player nonetheless. He masterfully blends rock, jazz, blues, fusion and country in his unique style. I just started taking a lesson from you, but we cut it and said there's so many interesting stuff. Let's just talk for this podcast. Welcome to this episode.
Thank you.
Theo van Niel Jr.
Thank you for having me, my friend.
Welcome. I said not internationally known. Well, I got to know you through a course on Through Fire.
Mm-hmm.
People from all over the world take those lessons.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get that gig, so to say?
I got that gig throughout my first album, Practice Bravado, which released in 2017. And what I did with that album was I transcribed the whole thing. So I've got a complete guitar transcription of every guitar part of that album. And somehow someone of Team Truefire noticed the transcription book. And that kind of was the start of our collaboration.
So there's Theo, the guitar player, and Theo, the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
How did that evolve? How did Theo, the guitar player, also become a teacher?
Well, I started teaching when I was 19, back when I was on the conservatory in Rotterdam, Codarts, Pop Conservatory. You actually were being taught over there. You were being taught to teach over there. So that was actually where it started.
But none of the guitarists enter there with that thought, do they?
No. Well, that wasn't my thought either. I remember when I also, before the conservatory, I did the HAVO for Muziek en Dans, which was a really cool music opleiding.
High school.
Yeah. And but I remember when some of the teachers over there said, well, you're probably gonna have to teach guitar as well because of how the world works nowadays. And I remember back then my thought was, I'm not going to do that. I want to be a guitar player and I want to do, I don't know, I have this kind of dream, I guess. But I think I was 15 back then. When I was 19, I started the whole teaching thing I actually like being a teacher right now. I started it on 19 in Leidschendam, where I still live right now. And I've got my own guitar school over here. And everything is going very well. So teaching is also, well, something I gradually became better at, I think. And when you're a good guitar player, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good teacher. So that gradually evolved throughout the years. And I also found it very interesting to analyze my own playing throughout the teaching, because people were sitting in front of me and they were saying, how are you doing that? And the first years,
good question.
Often was like, I have no clue.
Yeah.
So the student actually became sort of a mirror for of my own playing.
So it's also a tool, indeed, right? To reflect upon your own playing.
Definitely. Yeah.
Did you notice that quite early on from teaching? When you mentioned I was 19 when I started teaching, which is quite young, right? To have
I think
educational skills, perhaps. But
yeah, you've got to start somewhere. I remember I was teaching a lot of guys who were in their 50s or maybe even a bit older. But yeah, it was something like I said, I had to start somewhere with the teaching thing, but yeah, I kind of like it right now. I definitely like it right now. It's probably the best thing you can do next to playing guitar.
Mm-hmm. So, but you said I was 19 when I started teaching. You're about 17, right? When you entered conservatory then?
I graduated the conservatory when I was 21. So yeah, 17, that sounds right. Yeah.
How do you think back up on that? Because when I think of 17 to 21 and then finishing his studies, I'm like, whoa, that's super young actually, right?
Yeah, it was. Well, I've mixed feelings about it. I knew pretty early on that I wanted to be a musician. But that actually didn't start for me, the real thing, when I graduated from the conservatory. So when I was 21, that was just the beginning of it all. So I think I would, to be honest, would have got more out of the conservatory if I was a bit older, I think. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Well, I didn't really. The conservatory is how I see it. It is sort of, it's a music school, and they're sort of make this own environment, which sort of sometimes simulates how the music industry works and how being in a band works and playing with a band works. And you do the rehearsals and you do live gigs on the stage of the conservatory, but it's still a simulation. The things you were being taught at the conservatory didn't always work out in the real life. And also, I must say, to be honest, there were some times and decades, there were some times where I sort of was leaning a bit on my, if I may say so, my talent. So it made me, I was maybe a bit lazy back then.
Okay.
And with that kind of attitude, if I kept going on with that attitude, I could not make it in the real world. You would not make it. So there became a point in the real world where I had to ask myself, am I going to do this or not? And if you're going to do it, you have to do it the full 100% and not 50 or 70 or the good enough. And
that seems like a very interesting process. And that conservatory is all, it's 4 years. Mm-hmm. It's just a part, but the whole journey continues, right? I mean, that's not those 4 years. And
definitely, yeah. So I sort of had a love-hate relationship with the school. Mm-hmm. And I also saw a lot of students in their last year, the fourth year, who were sort of done with the conservatory and with being in music history class at 9 o'clock in the morning.
I remember that, man, with a headache, hangover.
Actually, it was not really a problem for me, but I noticed with the other people, and music and a school feels, to be honest, a bit contrary. On the contrary, especially with pop music, the education that I did, especially with rock and with blues and jazz as well, it's sort of a street thing. And it's not really a school thing. A street and school can be a bit opposites of each other. And when someone says, a teacher to a student, you have to do this, a lot of street guys would say, well, screw you, I'm not going to do that. So the whole thing becomes it can be a bit weird. And that was also a thing. I think the thing with musicians who had to be 9 o'clock in the lesson in the morning, who sort of had this rebel thing and maybe thought this is not why I want to become a musician.
Yeah. But that because your albums are called Self-Education and Practiced Bravado.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, so that word educational and practicing and school, for some reason it is a big part in your career, right? And now we're talking about it, okay, because I started asking about it, but self-education, can you explain it, maybe the title?
Sure, yeah. Self-Education is my last solo album, and basically it's about the most things you hear on the record: the bass playing, the productions, a lot of the guitar playing is being self-taught, and that's not something I necessarily learned on the conservatory. Back when I was did audition for the conservatory, I already sort of knew how to play, and they kind of helped me to in some good directions. But it still sort of feels like I think did the most of the work myself and found out most of the things myself.
At the end, it all has to be you, right?
Because definitely. Yep, definitely. So there actually are some things that one of my teachers back then, Agkat, was where there was the subject, what was it? The altered skill, I think. Was one of the first things that we tried to learn in the lessons, and then you had the backing track and you had to do a solo with the altered scale as well, and I didn't really check that out it could be better back then, but I'm actually now learning that stuff.
Oh yeah.
That they were trying to teach me back then. And sort of now I kind of see where I could use that kind of stuff. But back then, it wasn't really happening. So right now, I still have to, when I want to learn the altered skill, I still have to practice it myself, and I have to see where it works and where it doesn't work, and if it fits into my music. It sort of feels like I'm like self-education, I guess. But it's lots of things, the self-education. Right now with the YouTube thing, you can, if you want, you can check out almost anything. So the main thing that's holding you back is probably yourself, with how much energy you've got and how much time in a day you've got to study whatever it is. If you want to study production, guitar or bass or drums, it's just like probably being in the library back in the day. And there's this sea of information, an ocean of information, but what are you going to do with it? And I really like to go really deep in subjects like that.
Yeah, that must be a challenge, because if you there are so many sides to making music, like the production, the songwriting, managing your finance, and I don't know what, but still you like to dive deep. So how can you explain a little bit how you fragment that when you dive deep?
Well, it can be tough to bring it all together again. I'm not the best multitasker in any ways. So often I dive really deep in one subject for a period of time.
Yes.
And I try to, it's almost sort of when you're studying a subject, you're sort of programming your brains, and whatever it is, playing guitar or whatever, in in a sort of way has to stick with your brains, whatever you're learning. So I try to learn as intense and as much as I can in a period of time, and then I hop on to the next subject. And I kind of lean back with the other subjects, guitar, songwriting, with what I already knew, and that becomes the backbone of bringing it all together, I guess. Yeah, but it can be challenging still to bring it all together. That's one of the most. That's one of the things that I struggle most with, actually. Yeah.
One thing pops in my head that you just mentioned, like because nowadays there's so much information. You as a kid, your father owned a CD store.
That's right.
In the Hague area. Many musicians might know, might have memories of that place. So basically, you from a young age were in an environment with a lot of musical information then, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Can you tell me something about that period?
Sure. Well, my dad didn't play an instrument, but he he unfortunately passed away earlier this year. But he, thank you. He was a really big music freak, and he really loved music. And well, it all started with there was always music back in my parents' place. And when I would get up in the morning, there was music, and when you would eat, and it was sort of, you were also sort of being programmed, all those, because it was most of the time, I think it was the best of the best in the blues rock, the rock thing, the fusion thing, the jazz thing. It sort of was an unconscious thing that was always on in my parents' place. So that's where it all sort of started with. And then again, my father had that CD store for, he had that store for like, I think 24, 25 years.
Wow.
So it's a big part of my life.
Did you spend a lot of time there?
Yeah, I used to work there on the Saturdays.
So you got a CD at the end of the day.
Sort of, yeah, sort of, yeah, that definitely, yeah. But it was this cool thing with the CD shop. It was mainly specialized in rock music, but rock can be very broad. And the rock thing wasn't that big of a shop, so he sort of had to play with his inventory, which rock thing am I gonna sell over here? He didn't want to sell the rock CDs or the rock music that Free Rocket Shop was selling. That was the
biggest one back then, right?
Probably, yeah.
One of the
that was more the commercial stuff. But if you want to get, I don't know, a record of maybe a less commercial rock band, you would find it back in my dad's place. And he would, that was his thing.
So he went for that niche, so to say.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. And that sort of changes within those 25 years. Also with what was being hip at that moment. So you've got the new metal period, and you actually also got the black metal period and the death metal. And then that sort of was over. And then he got back into the classic rock thing. And also the instrumental fusion, the jazz rock thing, that was also a thing. But it kind of changes throughout the years. But yeah, there was so much good music. And it was really cool to see, to be on top of all those new releases every week of whatever it was.
Well, it must have been like a kid in a candy store.
That's right. I mean, a lot of people would say that as well. Yeah, of the customers. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, you smile when you talk about it, right?
Yeah. It was a good time. And it was also a time where the music industry was sort of booming, I guess, or it sort of declined. My dad had the shop until sort of 10 years ago, so 2014. Back then, you sort of could see throughout the shop what phases the music industry was going through, and probably with the peak back in the 2000s. Yeah, so that was interesting.
What kind of players did you discover back then?
Oh, lots. I don't know. I think of Greg Howe right now. Jimmy Herring was a really great player.
That Greg Howe Richie Kotzen album.
This great album. That was the stuff he would sell.
Oh yeah,
yeah, definitely.
Okay. I didn't live in that area, but if I would have known,
that's right. Yeah, lots of also the instrumental rock thing. That was also a period that was very popular. So
he was very much into that himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I checked. I read that he passed away. You posted this on Instagram, so I looked up some information, and his background on Facebook still there is Spotify list.
Oh yeah,
and there's 2 players in there.
Okay.
We are his favorites, you can see. It's you and Yngwie Malmsteen.
Yeah, Yngwie was one of those, I think. Yeah. But yeah, were many more players than that. He also was a big Jan Akkerman fan as well.
Okay,
There was a lot of focus back in the day at my parents' place, because there was sort of a difference between the music in the shop and the music at home. And the music at home was often a bit more traditional, more I think the 60s, 70s, 80s stuff maybe, with the top players of those times.
So at one point, while listening to all of that music, you were like, oh yeah, I want to do this myself.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, there was one point when he put on back in my parents' place, he would put on the second Winter album of Johnny Winter, and when I heard that first song, Memory Pain, I think it's called. The singing and the guitar playing, it really did something for me, and it was fair. There was this thing when Johnny would solo, I would sort of feel his guitar playing. It would sound logical to me, and that was sort of the first time where I thought I had a connection with the guitar. I think really had a connection, and it's really funny. It's sort of back then how I felt the guitar playing of Johnny Winter sort of still feels the same as when I play the guitar right now. So sort of I already had this connection with guitar playing back then.
But it's a way of communicating that appealed to you.
Probably. I think, yeah. And that also probably comes back to the thing we discussed earlier today about having a voice in your head and hearing some kind of music in your head. And even if you can play, you're probably having some kind of imagination about music and things you probably would like. I think that the Johnny Winter thing really, that was sort of the beginning of feeling those feelings.
So what age were you then?
I think 6 or 5.
Oh, that's really young.
Yeah, I didn't play for a while after that as well. I started when I was 8.
Okay.
Playing the guitar. Yeah. But I still enjoy that album to this day.
Yeah. Do you listen to it every now and then?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and actually the whole solo thing, my solo albums are more modern rock. It's not really Johnny Wintery per se. But
there's a hint there, right? I mean, that kind of bluesy, I mean, that the intention at least. I mean, I wouldn't say, oh, this is like Johnny Winter, but that intention with what he plays is like,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can hear
I
it
think
from
so.
your playing.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I do like to play other stuff than the instrumental rock thing. So I also like to do the blues rock thing.
Yeah.
And then there's way more space to channel my inner Johnny Winter, if you would say so.
Yeah.
And then then my voice and his voice, his guitar voice and my guitar voice could overlap in some sort of way. I notice. Yeah.
So you were 8 and you asked this time for my birthday, I don't want a CD but a guitar.
Well, actually,
how did it go?
Actually, my dad just gave me a guitar for my birthday.
Yeah.
And it was, I guess, an experiment.
Yeah.
He bought it for 50 gulden
50 guilders.
in the Marskramer. And
that's what you get when you have two Dutch people talking in English together.
Yeah. Lots of
yeah.
And they were like, we'll see what happens.
And what happened in the beginning?
Well, there was my teacher at my school that did some teaching guitar in a group in between the breaks of school. So from I think between 12 and 1 in the afternoon, there would be a guitar lesson every, I don't know, probably Wednesday. And it became pretty apparent after a short time that I was picking up the guitar quite easy, especially in comparison to the other kids. And after I think I did those lessons.
That's the talent years. Aspect. That's interesting. I talked with Matteo Mancuso about it, and he said, "Yeah, I noticed some friends were playing, and I noticed I went much faster in my process.
Yeah,
came much easier.
Yep. Yeah.
So which is an advantage, but later on it became some sort of disadvantage as well. Then to have.
You mean
talent.
In my case? Or,
yeah, it could be like.
Well, yeah, definitely. Yeah. If they say if you have less talent, you have to work more for it, whatever it is. And I think there's some kind of truth to that. Yeah, most definitely. And that also was indeed one of my things, especially with the conservatory time, which I had to, I had to learn it sort of, wouldn't call it the hard way, but that was a thing that needed to change. Yeah. Yeah. Being talented is not enough to be sort of whatever successful is in this industry. But you have to, the talent helps, but then the work ethic is just as important. And I know really talented players also in the Netherlands, and lots of them, but probably most don't. Most players I see are having trouble with their career, and also probably because you need more things than just talent, I think, in the music business. It helps, but the work ethic thing is important, and being a good entrepreneur is important, and the network thing is important as well. So getting along with people, that's a really big one, because musicians can be some interesting guys sometimes. So a combination between all those factors are in play when it's interesting when you see the top players. Often they would have some sort of range with with those things that I just recalled, the entrepreneur thing, the talent thing, the work ethic thing. That's really important.
Yeah, I have to think of Steve Vai right now, right? Like,
If you talk about work ethic,
I met him a few times, but I don't know him personally. But it seems to be somebody who is very consciously doing all those things.
Definitely, yeah. Very intelligent guy, and if you check out his stuff, other than guitar playing, it's also very often very sophisticated. His finances,
done with intention,
done with intention as well. It's actually personality, and that happened to play the guitar very well as well. But probably if he would be a business guy or whatever, he probably would do that at the top level as well. That's really interesting with guys like that. Yeah.
Hey, so from discovering Johnny Winter and getting your first guitar, there's a whole route to actually saying, "Hey, I really want to go to the conservatory," right? Tell me something about that. Your parents, from a musical environment, obviously supported you, right? How important was that for you?
Well, it was. How important was that for me? Well, in the end, you still have to make the hours yourself.
Yes,
so that's very important. And parents can only help and push sort of in a good direction. But back when I was probably 11 or 12, I would be playing for a few years by then. And I actually didn't like guitar playing. And I was with my second teacher. And the lessons weren't really that uplifting, to be honest. And I was at a point of I'm done, and I want to game. I want to do gaming, computer gaming all day long, and I like that more. And it was that point when I would return of the guitar lesson, it would be still in its gig bag when I go the week after. So I wouldn't practice the whole week. And
I kind of had that same thing, and that reminds me how important a good teacher is in an early age, right? Because my very first teacher was a very old guy, and he taught me stuff, and I was like, this is so boring. I don't want to do this. And then I knew The Young Ones, the TV show, was on prior to our lesson. I was always bummed out that the doorbell rang. That he was there. I was like, no, my guitar lesson starts. Then I met a guy from down the street, and he said, "Oh, this is the distortion. You do it like this."
That's right. Yeah.
And ram, let's go. Okay. And then, so that's, I hope not too many teachers have killed great careers.
I actually think so, but unfortunately, we're not the only people. I think that if I hear some stories around me that happened, that had those teachers, I think. But it's very important, I think. Well, my savior back then actually was YouTube. So that was the period YouTube started to come up.
My savior was YouTube. That's a nice sentence.
It's really funny. And then I saw all these guys. There was sort of a community going on. I saw Steve Vai, and I saw the Satriani thing, and a lot of unknown shredders as well. There was this compilation video that would be called Guitars Suck. And it was some random guy, I think in America, who was making compilation clips of really amazing technical shreddy guitar players. And those were like 30-minute compilation videos with amazing players, known players, but also unknown players. And I got, throughout those videos, I got introduced to lots of players I didn't know. And that really lit a fire on just like you said, that did something for me. Oh, so the guitar can sound like that. And it sort of surprised me. And yeah, then I actually started practicing again. It was really, I remember I quitted the lessons of that teacher. And it was really weird because my mother, I think, had the last conversation with the teacher, and she said he never has practiced this much before.
Okay, yeah, but
yeah, that's really,
that's that spark you
was-
have to have, right?
That's
I
right.
mean, yeah.
So that was the beginning of it all. And then I got we found a new teacher in Voorburg, Victor Sniverink, really nice guy. And he was also a student of conservatory, and he was more into the Django Reinhardt thing.
Oh yeah.
But he also liked to do the rock thing and the shredded thing. And the lessons were more open and less of you have to do this and this and this. And I could come to him with my questions. And yeah, and it was also a younger guy. So we would level a bit easier throughout the age thing, I think. But yeah, that was the start of it. The when things really got more serious. Yeah.
But could a good lesson also just be talking?
Yeah, I think so. That's also, well, in my lessons with my students, I often do talk as well. Yeah. So we dive more into the psychological thing behind making music. I think that's really important. And actually, those are more the things I work on nowadays. Less on
Skills. You can find your
and
skills, right?
technique.
I mean,
that's right.
Yeah.
And more about the thinking about the thoughts behind making music. What do I have to say? Yeah, and I try to try to also teach some of that to my students, especially with the lots of students over here who have this phenomena where they sit down on the chair and whatever we were doing with the lessons, I would say, okay, well, let's hear it. And there, most of the people are always bummed out, and they're like, shit, back at home, it was really working out, but now I can get it to work. And I also try to help the people with that. And that's
sounds
really
like a mini
mental thing.
performance, so to say.
Yeah. And I also say, if you can play it on that chair in front of me and you can perform it well, you probably can play it everywhere well, because that's probably one of the most toughest situations to perform in front of someone who probably sits like this and is a guitar player as well, so he knows the instrument.
So you have to be very conscious. What happens then? Why doesn't it sound as when I'm in my attic? There's tension probably.
Yep.
There's the head that enters.
Yep.
What else?
A lot of thinking, and that the thinking is a problem often.
Yeah.
It's best to get into the zone of feeling as fast as possible. And that's really personal. Some people can struggle with that, and other people can find it pretty easy. That really differs between the persons, but the subject and the theory behind it sort of stays the same. So yeah, first of all, I often try to relax the people a bit, and that can help. And it also it's interesting because it can show some of your flaws in your playing when you're not really into the zone. If you're playing really complicated stuff, sometimes you have to be really onto it. You have to have hyper focus to nail it. But what happens if you don't have the hyperfocus? Some things are really tough to play. So I try to, when I'm practicing, I try to get into the comfort zone is really important. So what things are within, what techniques, whatever lines, what songs are within your comfort zone and which ones are out of the comfort zone. And if there is stuff out of the comfort zone, I really try to practice or find the psychological thing behind it to get more stuff into your comfort zone. That's really important.
There's one song in particular, because you did a cover of Ave Maria, which is quite a particular choice actually on your latest album, which definitely has the Jeff Beck vibe on there, right? I mean, can you tell me something about playing that kind of style? Is that within your comfort zone, or does that require that hyper focus that you mentioned? Or something else, perhaps?
Well, maybe not the hyper focus, but
because it all with Jeff Beck as well, it all comes so precise, but it's also so loose. So you know, that's so magic. It's such a magical thing.
Yeah. Well, it's probably, I think, especially the first half of the Ave Maria thing is quite intimate. So it's quite low key. And those are situations and songs that I personally find harder to play, because first of all, you can hear everything you play in those situations. So if you screw up, everyone is gonna hear it. And a lot of players, including myself, often focus on the mid and high dynamic stuff, so the intense things, the fast stuff and whatever, but can forget the low key, the low key solo stuff or whatever you're trying to do. Same thing goes for Ave Maria, and probably Jeff Beck as well. It's something you can practice. Most definitely. And if you're practicing the low key stuff, so playing quietly and really go into the probably getting more vocal quality out of the guitar, I think it's a skill. So you can get better at it. And Ave Maria was actually a really good practice to do, to get that into one song.
Why did you choose that song for your album, by the way?
Well, I sort of was back then. I had a phase, and I still really like it, of this synthesizer music. I really was into the soundtracks of Stanley Kubrick, the director, and he had this what's her name? This woman who did classical pieces. Ran classical pieces through synthesizers, so stuff of Beethoven and whatever. And that was totally new back then. And that kind of inspired me because throughout there was sort of a bit more a keyboard synthesizer scene who were doing the classical thing, but run it through these weird sounds. I was sort of curious what would happen if you would combine that with the more instrumental guitar thing. And yeah, that was basically it, I think. I really like the Ave Maria song. It's a classic. And sometimes, often things just pop into my head. And I try to record everything that pops into my head, and some things work and some things don't work. And the Ave Maria thing was sort of an experiment. Yeah, actually, I remember the Ave Maria thing. I was like, I bought a synthesizer back then, and I want to try this classical thing throughout a synthesizer as well, but I couldn't play for shit. So I couldn't play a classical piece. But I found out there were websites on the internet who had MIDI data of classical pieces. So you could run MIDI throughout your synthesizer and it would just play. Yeah, we wouldn't have to touch any knob. So that was sort of my self-education with that song. So getting along with synthesizers, programming the stuff, and it sounded all right. So I thought, let's work it out and get a full song out of it.
Hey, out of all those voices and styles, one particular style is your course is called Countrified, right?
Yeah.
When did that voice pop up, or well, it maybe didn't pop up, but when did you think I want to spend time learning this?
Well, the whole country thing, I guess, started when I got my Telecaster. And I can't remember the point that I started doing all the country stuff, but it sort of, I guess, felt naturally to do on the tally.
Yeah,
but
that's an important development in your own voice and style, right?
Sure, yeah. I started to recognize stuff which felt quite easy for me to do. If you get just like the first grip lessons, I sort of noticed the plucking thing felt pretty natural to me. So I was probably trying to find my where I could go with the whole thing and try to push the techniques. Yeah. That probably was the start of it. And I also got the first years that I played guitar, probably first 3-4 years, I started out as an acoustic player. So I did all the fingerstyle stuff and a bit of the Tommy Emmanuel thing. Maybe that also has something to do with probably my right hand being quite free from my pick, so I could use those fingers with the plucking and all. I guess that's a thing. And also the Telecaster, yeah. I try to listen to the guitar that I'm playing, so I would play way different on a Gretsch guitar than I would on a Firebird-like guitar, because it's got a way different voice. So I try to listen to the voice of an instrument, and the tally sort of
push you there.
Yeah, it sort of excels with at the twang thing, and when you start plucking the strings, and the string tension is really nice when you're doing that kind of stuff on the tally.
It's funny when it just feels good, that's what rolls out. Then.
It becomes a natural thing. Yeah. So yeah, it was kind of odd. I didn't really listen to loads of country players or whatever. I knew the guys, and I knew Brent Mason and the Scotty Anderson and lots of great players. But it wasn't like I would check out all their solos, and I was trying to do this copy thing. Yeah, I can't explain the whole aspect of me plucking on the telly, but it just came natural, I guess.
50 minutes, this thing says.
Nice.
This was a lesson altogether, but I'll just grab my guitar in a bit and maybe we can discuss more after this is wrapped up. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Theo van Niel Jr.
Thanks.
And if you haven't heard your music, please listen to your music because it's really great. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.